today's video is something that is very, very relevant to me at the moment and for a lot of other mums and dads out there at the moment. And it is basically going to be focused around how to choose the right school for your child. So a bit of background information. I have two children. I have a 3.5-year-old called Klayton, and I also have a 1.5-year-old called Parker. And it is now at that time in the year where I have to start thinking about schools for my first baby to go to. Now this is a very daunting process for me. I don't know how it's come this early. Like, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this for another few years yet, but here I am and now's the time. So I was really, really clueless as to what I'm meant to be looking for in a school. And I feel like a lot of people that are in my boat are also very clueless. We moved to a new area, so we have no background knowledge at all on any of the schools that are here. We're utterly clueless. We've had opinions of so many different people and everyone says contradicting things. From the smaller schools are better, the bigger schools are better. Having come from London, we know big schools, and what our preference is, we just really don't know. So we obviously wanted to go and take a look at the school, but I put it out to you guys, and I'm so lucky to have you lot over on Instagram. And if you don't follow me, I will leave my handles on the screen for you now, because I'm over there on a day-to-day basis. But I basically asked your opinions on what sort of information I needed to be looking at to pick a school. So I basically asked you guys what sort of questions I needed to be asking, what I needed to be looking at before I went there, what I needed to just be taking on board in general. And you guys came back with so many amazing answers and bits of information. And then I had so many other mums saying, please share this information because I'm clueless and I'm going to be looking. And I thought, actually, I went to YouTube to look for this answer. I couldn't find anything on it. Why not share the information that you guys have given me to help loads of other mums and dads out there when they are going through the decision and the process of finding school? Because some of you may just be as clueless as me, and it's not that I didn't understand the basics, but some of you just pointed out some really good questions that I should be asking the schools and all things like that. So I have a notebook of questions and things that I noted down from what I wanted and from what other people said to me, and I've noted them all down in here, and I'm basically going to share with you what I've learned and what things you should be looking at when looking to choose a primary school for your child. So if you want more information on that, then just keep watching. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with things you need to be looking at before you actually go and visit any of the schools. And there was a few different things that in my head I needed to consider before I went, and also a few things that people had advised me to consider before I went to look at schools. Also, I have only looked at one school today, and I must say right now, that school was recommended to me by a lot of people whose opinion I may not necessarily have valued as much as others, and the school shocked me so much. I have like another 13 schools to go and look at because the town that I live in is saturated with little village schools and things like that, and we have no opinion on any. However, what I would say is go and look at every single school you think may be an option for you and your child. And the head teacher of this school also advised us to do the same, and the head teacher of this school has also been a head teacher in Birmingham and in London and down in where we are now in Devon. So she has been all around in so many different places, and she basically said go and look at all the schools. So even though her school was the first, she advised us to do it, and I would definitely advise you to go and look at all the schools because they really may surprise you. Now, the first thing I would advise before you go and look at any school is look at the Ofsted reports. Now, I had so much information about this and it was a bit of a brain overload really. So what I gathered was basically you are looking for a school that has a good or outstanding Ofsted report. Now, anything below that basically means that they are not hitting kind of the average criteria that is needed for a school to succeed, and they could be below average and they need things worked upon. Now, I would say also take these Ofsted reports with a pinch of salt. You want them to say that they're good and that they're working well and that the school is doing a great job, and obviously that is great and amazing. But the one thing that I will say is that obviously Ofsted reports are based on one day. Generally the schools, I'm pretty sure, know that the Ofsteds are coming, so they have days to prepare the school, prepare the children, prepare the teachers. So obviously that can kind of sway the result of some of these things. And not only that, but if a school is deemed to be underperforming, they do have the time to kind of turn around the school as well and try and work on the school, and it means they'll be working harder in the areas that are underperforming, so you may see a massive improvement in that school. And not only that, but sometimes if a school is underperforming, it may be given funding to improve, and if a school is really bad, it can be shut down. So just kind of consider all those options and things like that. But for me, the way that I'm looking at it is that all of the schools I'm going to will have a good or outstanding result on their Ofsted reports. Something else that was pointing out is to mainly focus and have a look at that teacher area, and where it talks about the teacher side of things in the Ofsted, have a real focus on that, because primarily your child is going to be looking and dealing with a teacher on a one-on-one basis every single day and be dealing with them in a classroom. So that is definitely something that should be focused around. But like I said, the whole report as a whole should be looked at. But like I said, do take it with a pinch of salt, because there are so many other aspects that go into picking and finding a school. So the next thing you need to take into consideration is the catchment area. Now, I know that from Devon to London, the catchment areas work slightly differently, and after speaking to Devon Council about this and about their admissions policy, they clearly stated to me that in our area we get given one designated school, which is a school that is extremely close to us or sort of nearby us, and then we also have all the other schools in the area whereby we can apply to those also. That being said, obviously each school then has their own admissions policy, so they may do it based on your location, siblings and other criteria. So not only is it worthwhile looking at what your local council advise and what designated schools you have and things like that, but it's also worthwhile looking at what the school's catchment criteria is as well. Because if you live miles away, you're less likely to get into that school, and if they only hold a small number of students, you're less likely to get in if they're obviously oversubscribed based on location. But you may have an older sibling that goes there, so that may bung you and kind of bump you up the list a little bit. So always have a look at those sort of things as well. What I would also say on that matter is in Devon, and again, I've had somebody else tell me that it was a bit different for people in the Midlands, so again, I would recommend you checking with your local council. But in Devon, we have 3 schools that we can add to our list of schools that we want to apply for. None of them have to be our designated school whatsoever, and you pop down 3 schools in preferential order of the ones that you want. So hopefully if you don't get your first, you have another 2 options that hopefully you are likely to get. So it's definitely worthwhile filling in those options and having a good think about it, because if you only put down 2, if you're entitled to 3 for example, if you only put down 2 and you don't get those, you could be given any school. So really make use of all of those numbers. Now, another thing that I wanted to touch on was the fact that you must make sure your application for schools is in on time. Please don't delay. If you are looking to look for a school, I would really urge you to start looking now. You need to be booking in viewings for schools. You need to be having a look to see if they've got any open days. Personally, down in Devon, what I found, which is completely different from London, whereby London have a lot of open days, is in Devon a lot of the head teachers meet you personally, which is so different from anything I've experienced before, and I think it's a really, really great way to get to know the school. So if you can, I would recommend you trying to book in a viewing, and I would try and recommend you booking in at least 2 viewings if you are likely to add that school back on your list and it's one that you definitely want. So I would recommend any that are going to be going on your list to view them twice. But in that first viewing, I'd be having a look to do them around the 9:30, 11:30 time, and then potentially going back in the afternoon as well. So you can really get a feel for the school when they're working and all settled and things like that. Going back to what I said, obviously there is a deadline date and you must adhere by it. If you miss the deadline date, you can be literally given any school. So the deadline date for Devon is between the 15th of November to the 15th of January. So all applications must be in within that time frame for us to obviously be allocated, hopefully, one of the choices that we would like, obviously based upon if they're not full and things like that. If you miss that, you really do pose a risk of not getting any schools that you want. So I would highly recommend you going on again to your local council's website, having a look at their admissions policy and checking the deadline dates. I have a feeling that it would pretty much be the same in whatever area you are in, but obviously I would definitely urge you to just check that, because you never know, it could differ ever so slightly. I also wanted to point out that don't feel rushed to make a decision and submit your child's application if you're not ready. So obviously you want to do it within that deadline date, but don't feel the need to do it on the day that the application line's open. If you haven't had a look at all the schools that you want to and haven't had a really good consideration of looking at them a couple of times, or bringing your child back, which is definitely something we're going to be doing. So the way that we're going to be doing it is me and Adam are going to go to all the schools, narrow it down to the ones that we really, really like, and then bring Klayton back with us to go and view at a different time with Klayton and see what he thinks of the school, because that is a good way, I guess, to urge and gauge what your child thinks of it and also gauge different opinions. And don't rush, because from again speaking to the local council and also speaking to head teachers of schools and things like that, There is no difference if you submit your application on the 15th of November or the 15th of January. You will still be considered according to the same way that everyone else is for the catchment areas. It really makes no difference, and the same procedures and guidelines will be followed for the application process. Now, I have a couple more things before I jump into the questions that you should be asking and considering when you go to the school. I have a couple more things that you should be considering. So one of the things that highly came up, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be so much applicable to me because all of the schools and my location where I live are all within driving distance. There is only probably one that I could probably walk to, and that's still a good 15-20 minute walk if I'm letting the boys walk really slowly. So for me, they're all going to be driving distance, but so many people said consider the proximity to your home. Consider if you want to be doing the school run every day with a car and what the parking's like at the school. And likewise, if you don't drive, consider what your walking distance is going to be, if you're going to need to catch buses and all things like that, because that can have a major effect. Now for me, even if I did live 5 minutes down the road from a school, I guarantee you there would be so many days that I would actually be driving nonetheless, because for me, sometimes it's just more convenient with 2 children, and if it's raining and if it's hot and all the jazz that goes in it because of Parker's age. So for me, I know that normally walking doesn't even come into it, and I will normally walk in the summer more. But obviously, if you are one of those mums that only walks, or you need to be able to have access to a school, you really should be considering the proximity to your home. And then the last thing, which is something, having viewed this school yesterday, it's something that I would say is ever more prevalent in me than anything else. Go with your gut feeling. You will just know. I guess it's like what they say when they say about you finding the right wedding dress and all things like that. If you've ever been married, you'll know what I mean. But just go with that gut feeling. When you walk into a school, you will instantly know and have a feeling about it and how you feel. And like I said, as soon as I walked into that school yesterday, I just felt safe and I felt like I was going to like it. And the more I walked around and the more I spoke to the head teacher, it just all felt right. So go with your gut feeling. We also drove to a couple of other schools yesterday that we hadn't seen before that are on our list to go and see next week or the week after. And when we drove nearby those, our opinion of them was completely different. So I would definitely say have a look, kind of go with your gut feeling, because those other schools had actually been quite highly recommended to us by neighbours and things like that. So definitely go with how you feel and what feels right in your heart, because you are their parent. You will know your child better than anyone else, and you will know if it feels right. Anyhow, I'm now moving on to questions and things that you should be asking or potentially look at asking when you're going into the school to be shown around. Now I have a whole double-sided list of them, so there is quite a few here, so I'm just going to run down them and share with you what they are and just kind of run through, because I actually asked the majority of these questions and some of the answers I got really surprised me, but in a good way, and things like that. And I definitely think they're things that we need to consider and know about as a parent with our child going into that school. And my phone's going off. Okay, so the first thing that I have at the top of my list, and this isn't necessarily in preferential order of the way that you should ask the questions, but I would definitely say take some of these and pinpoint out what the most important factors are to you, but is what is their disciplining method? How do they discipline the children? What are you looking at for that? Would you want some harsh disciplining? Are you not that bothered by discipline? For me, the way that the school answered this question yesterday was really good. They have like a structured kind of chart, and they can move children up and down, and then certain stages lead to you going to the head teacher, but that's quite drastic. You have to be really naughty to get to that stage. And they do things like timeouts and things like that. So it's quite gentle, but for me, I like my child to know that they shouldn't be naughty. I don't want them to have any sort of extreme harsh punishment that would leave them singled out from everybody else. But likewise, following off the back of this, also asking what their reward system is like. How do they get given good praise? And is there any sort of reward for good work, good homework, good behaviour and things like that? And similarly, don't know what that word is, can't say it, but similarly, oh gosh, that word, the reward system in this school was the same, and you could work your way up, and then you would go and get a sticker from the head teacher and all things like this. So there was definitely actions for reward and for disciplining in terms of the negative behaviour as well, which I really found that I loved personally. Then the next thing you should be looking at is what is the parent's involvement, and maybe you might want to be more involved as a parent. Now for me, again, the school that I went and looked at, they held workshops to help the parents learn things like phonics and how they bring on homework and stuff like that, which I thought was a great way of helping parents understand, because some parents are so utterly clueless I feel like I had 2 younger sisters and a younger brother, so the methods that they had of learning I kind of always have had in my brain over the years, so I don't feel like I've ever lost too much. But I definitely know like the way that children learn phonics now has completely changed to the way I remember it, so things like that are definitely handy, and for the school to offer things like that and offer PTA meetings and all things like that are really, really good. Now, the next one for me is really, really vital. With Klayton being so outgoing, so independent, enjoying so many different activities and things like that, after school curriculum was something that was definitely high up on my list, and other activities and clubs that the school offers. Now, this is my biggest worry of a smaller school, that they may not offer as many things, but again, the school that I went to offered so many things, from music and dance to forest school, which was a major plus for me because Klayton absolutely loves forest school. It's one of his favourite things to do. So having a variety of activities to do, and likewise before and after school clubs are also really, really important for the working parents out there, or people that might not have family around that can go and do quick school runs and pickups and things like that. Knowing that they're there and there to support you will always be helpful in kind of arranging your work pattern and day-to-day life as well. So if that's something, you should definitely be asking if you require that. And now another thing that came up is obviously, is there any sort of routine to their day-to-day pattern? Children like familiarity, but then likewise they don't want to be bored, so that was something that came up quite a bit. And again, that differs from reception to Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. And for me, when we met with the head teacher, she had so much time for us. I couldn't believe how much time she had for us. She met us individually and she took us around the school, and we actually ended up spending about an hour and a half with her going around the school. She took us around every sort of facility they held, showed us the whole entire school, showed us how the different key stages worked effectively and independently, and just how different they were. And you got a real different feel for each classroom as well, and you could tell that how great the younger reception class were playing and how they were learning through play, and then slowly how that started to change as they went through the years, and then it got to their elder children who were in a classroom. They looked like they were having lots of fun, but they were a lot more focused, and that for me, and just learning and seeing that transitional change was great, and it gave me a great feel for the school. Now again, this may not be something that's applicable for everybody, but looking to see if the school has any sort of special needs activities or extra people that will be on hand to help out in the classroom for children that may have special needs, if they take special needs children aside and give them extra one-on-one focus. I know for a lot of people this may not apply, but there are so many people out there that really should be asking those questions if their child does require it, because for me, if I needed that, that would be something that would be top of the list. So don't forget that you really want to make sure that if you do require that, you're asking if the school has anything in place for that, because if not, then you may want to consider another school that has a bigger focus towards it. Now, the next thing that I have is, what is the head teacher like? Now, somebody asked me this, and somebody said this to me, and now I would always go, and I would include this kind of with the gut feeling situation, but we actually met the head teacher on a one-to-one basis, and ultimately she is the person that runs the school. Now for me, knowing that the way that she runs the school and knowing how it's going to be going ahead and things like that was very, very important. Now somebody actually messaged me about this, and her daughter actually had special needs, and she said that obviously the head teacher was actually more involved with her daughter on a more day-to-day basis, which is why it was so important to her. But from what me and Adam gauged as well, it was extremely important to us. The head teacher mentioned to us so many times that she wasn't afraid, and has done, of getting rid of staff members if they've not been good enough. And in turn, if that meant that they had to go and she had to make those harsh decisions, then she didn't have a problem with that. I also like the idea that she wasn't a teaching head, which has swayed me off of some other schools which I've heard about, because I feel like sometimes schools do need that head teacher to be there to manage, and there's teachers there to teach for a reason, and it's kind of swayed my opinion. And I may be more swayed when I go to other schools if they do have a teaching head, but again, that's just my personal preference. And I feel like the head teacher that I went and saw, she was so, so lovely. She had all the time for us. As we were leaving, I asked her one last question, and she brought us back in the school to show us something. It actually made me late for my now appointment, which I had to rearrange, but I would rather that. And she had so much time for us. All of her answers, she had so much respect walking around the school. You could tell she wasn't a head teacher that was feared, but she also wasn't a head teacher that was to be messed with, which I really personally loved. And I feel that children need that stable base. So also I would recommend you, no matter what, speaking to that head teacher and just really getting a gauge of how you feel about them and what their principles are. Now, this is something that is really, really important for me, and I think I spoke about it on Instagram a few times, but I am so torn between a smaller and a bigger school, and the reason why I'm torn between the two is because I feel like since moving Klayton from a bigger preschool to a smaller preschool, whereby he only has 8 in his class instead of like the 20 or the 30 numbers or whatever it may be that he had in that other classroom, his behaviour has drastically changed. And the reason why I think that is Klayton is a very outgoing little boy. He loves talking and playing, so I thought a bigger school would suit him. And I'm still not completely swayed off a bigger school, because for the extra things they do, I definitely think that this could suit his personality. But seeing him in a smaller school now and seeing him in a smaller preschool, I have noticed how much he has loved the one-on-one attention, because he is that kind of boy that loves having the attention. So I've seen how much he's loved and thrived off of that, and he's still continuing to learn and all things like that. And I do worry that at a smaller school he could get a little bit bored if he's there for like 6 years or so. But yeah, I would definitely say that you should be looking at how much one-on-one time they get, because even at the bigger school, as we were walking around, and obviously none of the teachers knew we were coming in for a viewing, and I'm sure they see them on a daily basis anyhow. As we were walking around, even in the reception classes, they were pulling every child aside at different points to have one-on-one time with them, which for me, I don't remember that other than in reading time when I was at school and we had like teaching assistants. I don't remember ever being pulled aside and separately whilst other children were doing stuff to have focused learning. And every single classroom around the school seemed to have that in all the different year groups. So there was my worry that he wouldn't get as much one-on-one time in a bigger school, but that's definitely been put to bed now with the school that I looked at in particular. So I would definitely say that looking at that is another aspect you should consider. Now, another thing that was a very important subject to me, and not necessarily for any particular reason, but it was the bullying side of things and what support they give and how they address things. Now, I think the reason why this has become most prevalent for me is because at the school Klayton was at previously, and the preschool he was at, there was a lot of mums that I'd spoken to that had children in the older years, and the way that the head teacher managed the school and the bullying side of the school, it was always very much on the side of the bully, and there was very little action taken for the bullying behaviour that led to many parents removing their children. There was actually a friend of Adam's who had children that went to that school, and likewise they went through a very similar situation. So for me, whilst I don't think Klayton will ever be the bully or be bullied because of his confident behaviour, or I'd like to think so, there is always that possibility that your child could turn into the bully or be bullied. And for me, the way that the head teacher responded to this in saying that obviously they'll involve the parents will be notified and they'll look to take relevant action. And likewise, she also said, which I absolutely loved, that she feels like any child that is misbehaving in a certain way, there is always a reason for it, which she's so right. If a child is misbehaving in class or bullying or whatever it may be, there has got to be something going on. If they're misbehaving in class, then obviously the work may be too hard, or they may be bored because it's too easy. If they're misbehaving outside of school or in terms of with their friends or relationships, there's got to be something going on there. So kind of addressing that situation. But I like the fact that, I mean, as a parent, if my child was ever bullying, I would want to be the first person to know. And again, I am not that parent that would let it sit. Klayton would know that it was completely wrong on so many levels, and he would be punished for it. He would lose whatever sort of extra activities he got, whether it was screen time or reading a book before bed or whatever it may be, anything fun that he enjoys, he would be reprimanded for it, obviously within reason. Not an overly harsh parent, but I would want him to know right from wrong, basically. So for me, a bullying procedure is a massive thing that I wanted to know about, because just based on previous schools, I've seen the way they handle things, and it's not a way in which I would like bullying handled for the school that my son goes to. And likewise, following off the back of this is also emotional support. Now, a lot of schools now have in place where they have like a parent support worker. The school that we looked at, again, had that in place, and again, for all sorts of things, there was a parent support worker in place. You can go to them, they'll come to you if necessary. And for me, I love the idea of having somebody there that's so focused just on the children and not the actual schooling, but more in terms of emotionally supporting the child. So for me, that is a massive plus if a school has somebody in place to do that. And it may be applicable, every school may have it, I don't know. But for me, just knowing that they did have that was a massive plus for me. Now, another thing, and I think this is probably one of the last things that we actually really wanted to know when looking around the school, was the parent staff to child ratio. Now, for me, again, in the school that we visited, we noticed that there was a lot of staff members per child as such. So in the classroom that we was in, they actually allowed the 2 year groups to kind of go into one play area. So there was obviously 2 main teachers, and there was also like 3 or 4 support teachers as well, which for me was amazing. They were so hands-on, and obviously it helps give the children that extra one-on-one time. And as the year groups went up, you could still see that they had support workers in class. And one of the things that I loved about the school that I went and visited was also the fact that they said that a lot of the support workers come out in the afternoon, and they help in, especially in the older years, I think she said. And it basically helps give the children the independence they need, so they're not always have somebody to fall back on, which I thought was really, really good and a great way of learning. And obviously, sorry, my camera died, but yeah, I thought that was really great that children have the support of a morning when they really, really need it during the learning time or whatever it may be, and then they're also learning the independence in the afternoon, which I just thought was great. And then the very last thing that I would say is also about the facilities that the school hold. How big are their play areas? What sort of play areas do they have? I know Klayton loves and thrives off of climbing frames and all things like that, and some schools may not have something. They may have more basic stuff. The school that I had offered play equipment at lunch breaks and things like that as well. So I thought that was a really, really great way for the children to all continue their learning and things like that at playtime. And also I loved, and this is the one thing that I'm going to comment on because it's kind of steering off the question side, but the one thing that I would also consider and desperately urge you to look at, and again, I am more used to this because I went to a school in the London area, but the safety of the school as well, and the area of the school in terms of gating and stuff like that. So the school that I looked at had multiple gates that you had to come through to actually get into the school premises, which I loved, and it made me feel like the children were completely and utterly safe, whereby some schools I know just have like little wooden fences, and some schools leave their doors open in the summer because of temperatures and things like that. So I would also consider how safe the school is and what sort of safety procedures they have in place. Okay guys, so that is everything for this video. I really do hope this has helped some of you guys out there on things you should be looking at before applying and before looking at schools, and then the questions you should be asking when applying. I hope this has given you some background information. All of the people that helped me, I cannot thank you enough for all of your suggestions, because it desperately helped me when going to view that school, and I felt so much more confident going in there knowing that I had got all the answers out of the school that I wanted. If you did like this video, then I would love for you to like this video so I know that you enjoyed it and it was content that was relevant. If you have any other questions or anything else you think I should be considering when looking at a school or anything like that, because I am going to be looking over the next few weeks, then I would love for you to pop them below. And also anyone else that may be using this in years to come will obviously be able to look below as well, because it will obviously help them. But that is it from me, and I will see you all again in another video shortly. Bye guys.
I just wanna hold you. I just wanna look into your eyes and tell you that I want you. You know you make me feel so